Hello everyone, I'm Jessica Drew Day and I'm here tonight at the State of the State. We have with us some wonderful guests that are joining us. They're joining us to talk about the school bonds and what's happening in their cities and towns. Unfortunately, this is happening in all the cities and towns in Rhode Island, so if we're going to talk specifically about North Kingstown and Barrington, but I am encouraging everyone to call their cities and towns individually and ask if there's going to be a school bond vote this year coming up. So with us, first of all, we have Holly Quinn. She's a lifelong resident of North Kingstown. And we have Ricky Thompson. He is a 30-year resident of North Kingstown, retired with a background in design engineering, senior management, and he's active in the government in North Kingstown for 14 years. And we have Lisa Daft, a lifelong Rhode Island resident, and she's the chairwoman of the Barrington Republican Town Committee. Thank you all for being with me.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Yes. So first of all, I'm going to turn to North Kingstown, and I'm just going to ask, tell me about the bond, what they're doing, how much it is, and where you stand.
We actually have there's two bonds. It started out as 3 projects, and what the town council did was they combined 2 of the bonds. They combined a safety complex and the new middle school, and then they also, the other bond would be for a recreation center. Personally, that's what really drew me into this, is when they combined the bonds, because essentially what I felt as though that they were doing was taking away the opportunity for my vote. So instead of me being able to pick one or the other, they're saying you got to pick both. And I just didn't feel that that was right, because I did favor one over the other, but that was before I had a lot of information.
Awesome. Holly Quinn.
Hi. With them combining the bonds, there's a lot of speculation that those of us that oppose the bonds in North Kingstown oppose it for just in general and saying we don't support teachers, we don't support first responders. That's not the case. What we don't support are these bonds. We would like, it's been a rush to get us to this point. Again, as Ricky said, most residents in North Kingstown are not happy that the 2 projects were combined into one. We actually asked them to pull the bonds. They refused to. They voted and pushed them through. What we would like to see happen is we would like to see the town stop. And at this point, it's only going to happen when we vote no, come November 7th, and go back to the drawing board. I know they talk about incentives that are offered from RIDE to all towns and cities in Rhode Island, but it's an additional possible 15%. It's not a guarantee. And to us, it's just not worth what this bond is going to cost for so many unknowns. We don't have anything specific to speak of. We don't have site specific. We don't have grounds. We don't even know. We haven't done traffic studies yet. They're not complete. We have ground testing, but that's not complete. There's just too many unknowns for a $222 million bond.
Okay, so first let's back up a little bit, just so our viewers that are watching can understand. The bond, how much is the bond? You said
222 million.
Okay, and what is it that they want to do with the money?
167 million will be for the middle school, and which since has been reduced to like 130 million, but the bond is still going through at 167 million because they're going to use that money, additional money, on other projects for the grammar schools now. And then I believe it's 55 million for the safety complex. So the combination thereof of the 2. You can't vote for one or the other. You have to vote for both of them. You have no choice.
Okay. Now, the safety complex, I was reading a little bit about that. It said that there's no female locker rooms or bathrooms, so what do they want to do exactly with that safety complex? I've heard different things, so if you could please tell our viewers.
That's a great question, because when this first came up a couple years ago, it was stated that the chief of police actually said to the chief of fire that, why don't you build a facility for the fire department, which is needed because the facility that they have will not fit the larger trucks and what have you. So the chief of police says, we can stay here and you can build another facility. But for some reason, that is not going to happen. So they have a facility now that they want to talk about. They have leaks in the roof. They have mold. It doesn't fit all the personnel that they currently have. And it was built, I think, late 50s, so you really didn't have the female firefighters. So they don't really have facilities for the women now. It's unisex facilities. So they want to separate that out, and they want to have better facilities, which I can agree with. But I think the way that it's going about is the wrong way, similar to with the schools.
Okay, so they want a new roof too. So they're going to tear down what's existing and build new and move it? I heard they were going to move it, or they're not going to move it?
No, they do want to move it. They don't know where.
Okay.
They don't have plans for it either at this point.
But they already have an amount that they want?
Exactly.
Okay, but they don't have the plans for that yet?
They don't have the
Okay.
plans or the site.
No site, no plans.
And it's worth mentioning that just 8 months ago, they were saying that the new safety complex was going to cost $31 million. So now it's 80% higher than it was just 8 months ago, and I'm not sure why.
Okay. All right. So we're just going to table that for a moment so we can turn to Barrington and Lisa.
Sure. In Barrington, we have just a school bond, so we're a little different than North Kingstown, and our school bond is not to exceed $250 million, and for that we will be getting renovations and additions at 3 of the elementary schools and our high school. They will be eliminating one of the elementary schools and then combining the grades, possibly pre-K through 5 in the lower elementary schools. We have a new middle school, so that our middle school is in good shape. I think a lot of the issues for me and many of the people that I tend to reach out to me is that we know that there are some needs in the schools. The schools were built in the 1950s, and the population that we educate today is very different than that. We had a very transparent process. They had multiple tours and community forums, and when you walk through the schools, you do see that there's some space issues. And it's hard to deny that, yes, we know that we need some improvements for sure. We have an aging roof on our high school. We have just different needs today than when the schools were built. One of the problems I have is that our bond is, to the taxpayers, at best 54% reimbursement, starts at 35%, that's the gold standard, and then you meet these criteria moving up different percentage points. And when you look at that, the average home price in Barrington is $440,000, and that is going to be somewhere about just close to $800 a year on taxes. And that is just for the bond. It doesn't include any operating expense increases, which we have seen, consistently, 1 to 2%, increase based on different state reimbursements and things like that. So I think that the problem is I agree with what's happening in North Kingstown, is everything's being rushed through. They just voted on the final, school committee just voted on the final option that they want to move forward with to stage 2, and that now goes back to eliminating an elementary school. Well, there was a very big campaign when this first came to light about a year ago, when we heard that they were going to close a local elementary school, and the parents really spoke out. Actually, the last election really came down to a referendum vote, basically for that one issue, was that we did not want to see, the parents did not want to lose the local elementary schools. They like the community that it builds. More kids can walk there. It keeps things a little bit smaller. They had originally wanted to knock all the elementary schools down and build two big mega schools, and that was not really something that the town wanted. One of the things that I want to bring to light is more of a sense of how we can make these, instead of these sunsetting initiatives that we're getting this money for, because that is sort of a narrative that is in all the communities, is that, well, if we don't get it now, it's going to cost us more later. And I understand that, but still, to look at $110 million to taxpayers versus maybe $50 million now, they're making us take the bonds all at once. So this project that they proposed in our town, the option 5, is going to take 5 years to complete. Well, we have to take the whole bond on day one, basically shovels in the ground, and you're paying on that at that point, even though you're not going to finish this project for 5 years. I don't understand why the state is making us do that. It does bother me that there's not a better way to, kind of pull down that money. At least it spreads the tax burden over some time, and it maybe allows you to kind of get some other things in line that maybe you can start to reduce your debt service. We have a high debt service on our new middle school, and we still have 19 years of paying on that before it really opens up some of the debt. In Massachusetts, they have a much better process, and they fund their school construction very differently. They take 1 penny on every sales tax receipt of their 6.25% sales tax receipts. They take 1 penny of every purchase, and that goes into their fund. What you'll find is that when you look up at their school building fund, is that they have these sunsetting principles that we're talking about. They have that every day. They actually start their baseline at 31% reimbursement, and then you grow from there. And so I don't understand why the state doesn't want to move forward, with trying to make these things permanent. So there's not this big rush. I feel like when things are rushed, mistakes happen.
Exactly.
Who's to say that the cost of these projects aren't going to go up in 5 years? Look at what's happened, just hearing this in North Kingstown, just with the difference in their safety complex. We know that costs only go up. And so my concern is that even if they have an increased adjustment in their final proposal, who's to say that that's what's going to happen? I am also very concerned about who has the final say in some of these commissioned schools. I think that there's a new law on the books. People can look that up if you're listening. It's House Bill 7943. And it does have a stipulation in there. And the taxpayers may not have an ultimate say. I mean, they can have a voice, but it doesn't mean that they actually sometimes get a vote. So there's a lot of what ifs. I think there's a lot of things that can happen during that 5-year, time frame, that all of a sudden, you're committed to this money. And I think that it's a very big price tag. I think with what's happening in everyone's lives with inflation, I think that you do have to be just a little bit more mindful of that, financially speaking, from a financial standpoint only. We should be really, if you want to talk about responsible budgeting, we should not be budgeting for $110 million to the taxpayer when we still have we have a high debt service that won't be coming off for 19 years. Not saying that we don't need to have some things happen, but there has to be a better way of doing it. And I'm really unhappy with RIDE and the representatives of the State House that we're not really finding a better way to fund these programs, so that we're not all pushed, to get this done now. I think that whenever something has to get done like that, it should raise a lot of red flags.
I agree with you, Lisa. And that's, the thing is, once this bond, taxpayers go out, we approve the bond, and then it goes to RIDE, and then RIDE goes through it all, and then they go back to their school committees and the town councils, and they say, okay, this project, you received the bond for $200 million, but now we've looked at it. Now they look at it and they go, well, it's only $150 million. Now that they already approved, the taxpayers already approved $200 million, that $50 million is now put aside, and they have that money already approved. Yeah. It goes into an account, and then the town councils and the school committees can do what they want with the money.
Exactly.
Correct.
So there's a big issue here. It's the elephant in the room that needs to be addressed. This is everyone's money. And then, yes, they're rushing it because we're getting tax incentive money from RIDE, which is, again, it's either taxpayer money, our money already that's coming from the state, or they're calling it grants. Now, we all know with the grants, there's strings attached. And if any taxpayer out there wants to look, or email me, I'm happy to send off this information through an email, but there's like check marks. Yep. And I just wanted to talk with, we'll turn back to North Kingstown and talk about, let's see, you stated, that you're not opposed to the renovations or the new buildings, and you believe it's important for North Kingstown to invest in its students and first responders. What would you like to see happen to accomplish this goal?
Well, our schools and the safety complex, they need help, basically. And what I've said from day one is that, they're going out and they basically looking at raising and rebuilding. And I said, will you at least look at renovating? compare cost. Let's think of the taxpayer here, because this is going to be a big bite out of people's monthly check or yearly check for their taxes. But they refuse to do that. Now, when this first came out, probably about close to 2 years ago, just started talking about it, asset management, I had asked if they've ever looked at any schools as far as renovating. Well, no, we haven't. Can't be done. And I said, yes, it can. Just for example, in Newport, their lone middle school was completely renovated. And it goes against a lot of the arguments they have in that, what do you do with the students? You can't do this, you can't do that. I says, why don't you give them a call and see what they did? Maybe we could learn something. Maybe we could save some money. Maybe we could make a better school and a better safety complex. But they just refuse to do it. And it's very frustrating.
I think it depends on the consultants. Okay, so in Barrington, we've had a change in our school committee. And so what we found was the initial group that was leading the charge for the first 2 mega schools, they had hired KBA, which is a consulting firm, and they were going to be, I think, project managers or, moving forward. And what we found was that they were telling us the same thing. You cannot renovate, you have to build new, it's cheaper per square foot. And luckily, one of the new members to the school committee is in project management and in his regular life, and he knew that of course you can renovate. And so now they fired that initial consulting group, hired a new consulting group who. Their plans, as you heard in Barrington, we don't have any plans for anything that's brand new. It is a full renovation. They feel that the bones are good and that you can actually turn a school with good bones into something that is, looks new, feels new, and it was cheaper than building new.
You know what's real interesting too is that some weeks ago they put out a flyer and just showing this picturesque new middle school, and it wasn't really what it was going to look like, but they wanted to show something really nice.
Yeah, it wasn't
someone that is on board with what we're looking at actually found out that the picture of the school is a Washington, D.C. high school that was renovated.
Oh.
Imagine that. So that was a little bit, they had some explaining to do, which they didn't want to do.
That question was raised.
Yeah.
Right.
So you can't, but you could, and that's your example.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know about you, but my house is a 1880 Victorian farmhouse,
Exactly.
And we renovated it, for, a fraction of the cost. Many Rhode Islanders live in an older home. You wouldn't say, oh, it needs a new roof and windows, let's rip it down and build new.
Right.
Exactly.
You're going to go in and you're going to do the renovations. And I don't know if you saw this in North Kingstown, but I did in South Kingstown. We have, they do put like $1 million aside every year for maintenance, yet they push it off. And they don't do it. And they take the $1 million and they put it in undesignated funds.
Yes.
And then where does that money go? No one knows. So
That's the big
if
question.
they were maintaining the buildings all along, just as we all do as homeowners, we wouldn't be in this situation. So there's, really calling people to local politics, to run for your school board, go to your town, run for your town councils, get involved in politics. It's important. It's all of our tax money.
Be involved. Yeah.
Be involved. So my other question is, how much would this affect the average taxpayer in North Kingstown if a $225 million bond goes through? Just average.
If these bonds do go through, taking the average price in North Kingstown of a house, and I believe it's around $500,000 and $550,000, it'll be around $1,000 a year. And if you're looking at, and we've had people stand up and say in meetings, I can't afford this. And I know that myself, when I've talked to people, especially the elderly on fixed incomes and what have you, they can't afford it. And basically they're saying, will you help us? We can't do this.
Right.
But it just seems to be not being heard. It's very unfortunate. And that's why I go back to, and I won't stick to the subject, is that, this options. Options are good. If you want to build new or you have to, fine. But how about looking at renovation?
Right.
We've got, our town hall was completely renovated. We got Wickford Elementary has just been sold. That's going to be renovated. So this is happening not only in North Kingstown, but throughout the state.
Right.
Do it here.
Yes. And so you said $1,000 a year but the bond is 20 years. So that's $20,000 they're asking from the North Kingstown residents for these schools that we know they don't have a plan for.
Nope.
Right.
Do we have children to go to these schools? What's the enrollment like in North Kingstown?
That's been on the table for a while, going back and forth, because enrollment is down, but if you ask them, they'll tell you enrollment's up. And this is what we've been saying, we've kind of been preaching this for a couple of years, that people need to pay attention to the fact that the school budget is about 73% of our town taxes. Get involved. As a resident, understand this. This affects you. You might say, a lot of people we've encountered were like, it's school, I don't have school-age kids. No, but you're a seasoned resident who's been there a while. This is really going to affect you.
Right.
So get involved and pay attention. We asked when the bonds came up, it seemed to be, and I don't know if Barrington experienced this, most of the marketing went towards parents and of school-age children.
Yes.
And we heard from residents, we had a grassroots effort. We've been working on it for a while now. It's been boots on the ground to get the word out to people. We've created flyers on our own, printed them at our own houses, used our own money, and to get this out. And as we go to houses, we find out from seasoned residents that they knew nothing about this. There has been no leaflets. Now, just up until recently, now they're starting to flood people. Now that all the forums are over, the meetings are over, everything is now coming to, now we're going to send these flyers out to you. We're going to have people go hook these little cards on your door on something that we're lobbying for ourselves because we've paid for all of that. So I feel badly for the residents who weren't informed, who are now finding out or finding out by default, and this is really going to affect them. And this is going to happen all over Rhode Island with everybody.
Yep.
And early voting has started, so people
Yes.
are already
Right.
voting.
Yes, exactly.
And you mentioned like we had community forums. There were 4 of them. Well, there were only 2 before they decided on their option. And so they picked the option before the last 2 community forums. And I understand they wanted to try to have an option so people actually knew, I guess, where the money or how the money was going to be spent. But I also felt that it really took away from the last 2 public forums because you didn't really get a chance to voice your concerns or your ideas. And in Barrington, we fund about 86% of our town budget. With property tax, we don't get a lot from the state, and we don't have commercial industry. And so I think it's important to be mindful. There are people in Barrington who are paying more in taxes than what they paid for their homes. And I understand that people will just not pretend. I think one of the things I have the biggest problems with is when I hear someone say, well, it's only $75 a month. I think that's not really, I think that's sad. It makes me very sad to hear that. I feel that as someone who's helped in a lot of campaigns, I really have walked up to almost every house in Barrington to drop a leaflet or some literature. And I think that when you get out there and you really meet people and you see what who lives in your community, I think maybe you think differently about saying it's only $75 a month. And I think that today that's a lot.
Almost $200 a month in some instances, depending on what the value of your house is. Now, we all know the values in Rhode Island are not going down.
Correct.
And I don't know if you've heard this story at the town meetings. I have heard it, where people have said, well, if we build it, then kids will come. And I'm like, well, I don't know about you, but there's no housing available in South Kingstown, in my town, and I imagine North Kingstown. I think I was recently looking for a house in North Kingstown because my daughter and her fiance were looking for a house. There was nothing for sale in their price range. So I can't imagine that being the same story throughout the state, that there's even any availability of houses. So where this building, they will come, where are they coming from? Where are they going to move to?
Right,
so,
right.
Another point with these incentives that it seems like everybody's chasing, something that I found out a few weeks back is that the incentives are not guaranteed through the life of the bond.
Right.
And I didn't know that. So there's another opportunity if for some reason to legislate, our taxes will go up even further, and that's beyond the annual increases, that's beyond the initial increase. So this is just going to push people out of their homes, and these are things that are not being spoken about. And that's the most unfortunate part. I feel that people should be informed in order to make a good decision.
Yeah.
And I'll add that too, is that, again, I looked at the state. We have a budget over $13 billion for, 1.1 million people in this state. The fact that we're having to have this conversation where we all agree that there are things that are needed, we know that we need some updating and things like that. The fact that it's being put so much onto the taxpayer when we do already bear a very high taxed state, and the amount of that budget, the fact that we can't better help the residents to update the schools, if this is something that everybody seems to be in agreement upon, but yet we're all kind of faced with the same issue, is that it's going to be very costly to the taxpayers. Where is the state money?
Right. And to bring that up, they did pass that last budget last year within like a half an hour at the State House. There was no pushback because we're a Democrat rule.
Right.
So, another push to run for office. If anyone out there would like to run for a seat at the State House, please do. We need to have people up there that are going to question these things and say, well, wait, that's a lot of money. We know it was COVID money too, right? That came in bucket loads, and it's not going to be there this coming year. So I am encouraging everyone to watch and see, what are they going to get rid of this year? It's going to take them a lot longer to pass the budget in 2024 because the money's not going to be there, and the things that they're putting the money into are not sustainable. They're building Welcome Center in Providence. Well, how are they going to sustain that? They're not going to have the money to fund payroll and everything else. So we're coming to the end of the show already.
Wow.
It's been an awesome half an hour. I'm so happy to have you all here. Is there anything else? We have the last few minutes here to just continue in.
I just hope everybody educates themselves on their town, their city, whatever it is. Educate yourself. This is going to cost you money, and you need to know, you need to be informed, and how much your school budget actually takes up of your taxpayer money.
Exactly.
We've asked the same thing about these bonds. That was another question. Big bone of contention. What is the talk of maintenance on this? People in our town admit we kick the can down the road quite a bit, and a lot needs to be refurbished and fixed. Well, where is the maintenance for the new stuff? There's no talk of that either.
there's not.
So just educate yourself and get out and vote in November. Vote. Have your voice heard.
Get to meetings. I mean, I think that the participation, we don't see it. We have the biggest bond to be passed in Barrington, and out of the 3 community forums, I mean, there really hasn't been more than maybe a dozen different people, because there are people who show up to multiple meetings, but it's just not, the participation isn't there. I think there's people that don't even know about it. I agree.
Right.
I think there are people outside of the school system that, unless they know someone who's more in tune, but really just try to make the time to get out to a public meeting. I think that that's really what we need to do, just so people do get educated. There's a lot riding on this, and I think that there's better ways to handle all of this, and it's going to start more really at the State House, and I really urge people to get involved, because we do need people, and there's no reason that Democrats can't take these ideas and bring them to the State House and make them important. I think that educating kids and where they're getting educated should be a top priority, but I don't think it's a top priority for the people that are up at the State House.
Right.
Right, and just to mention, a lot of people don't know how to find out about those public meetings. And I just want to tell you all, you can go to the Secretary of State website, and it's under meetings, and it has every public meeting is listed. So you can go right on there and see the time. It will have the agendas. And if anybody wants the link, you can email me at jessicadrewday@gmail.com, or go to my website, jessicadrewday.com, and I will get you the link so you can check out and find out about meetings. And if you're interested in running for office and anything like that, please let me know. Any questions about tonight's show? We covered a lot, and I just want to make sure that we get the information out to all of you and get you to the polling place in November. And a vote no doesn't mean that it's gone forever. It just means that it's paused.
Correct.
And then they'll actually go back and do what they need to do, and then we can have the information to move forward as an educated resident and voter in Rhode Island. So I just wanted to thank you all for being here on the State of the State with me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And yeah, it was really great to see you all and just to get all this information out. And I know there's so much more we didn't even get to. And I appreciate you're all taking the time out of your busy schedules to be with us and join us at the State of the State. And we look forward to seeing you all at the next show.